Toxic behavior. Never mind the other issues that plague the gaming industry, we should go after people who dare to use mean and hurtful words. We could never risk someone getting their precious feelings hurt. Forget the microtransactions that are downright predatory in nature that are present in damn near every game you find on the market. Those are not a real problem. Who cares about season passes that fragment online communities and intentionally hold back content that should have been released with the game? Those are nothing to worry about either. What about being forced to pay for online multiplayer in 2018 and locking part of the game you already paid for behind an artificial paywall? Nope, of course not. None of those issues actually matter. It's not like they affect everyone in the gaming community indiscriminately. We have bigger fish to fry. Today we're going to be taking a look at a real beauty of an article I found through N4G full of lies, deception, and misinformation from The Loot Gaming, a site I've personally never heard of before, and probably for good reason if this article is anything to base the quality of the site on. It was written by Adam Llewellyn, I hope I said that name right, who I have never heard of either. This entire article is basically one big opinion piece on why gaming companies should fire toxic customers. I hope I'm not the only one who is thinking just how absurd that notion is. Whatever happened to the customer's always right? Shouldn't businesses adapt to meet the needs of their customers, not the other way around? Sounds like some good old corporate slaving taking place over here. So the crux of this argument is a tweet from Matt Piscatella, who works as a video game analyst at the NPD Group. In case you're unfamiliar with the NPD Group, I'll go over it real quick in the most simple terms I can think of. Basically, all they do is they go and collect sales data from different industries in terms of consumer products. They compile that data and then provide the actual sales numbers to the different companies that are basically members in their group. So the gaming industry, for instance, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo use the NPD Group to track the number of consoles sold each month in the US, for example. So they're a pretty important part of the gaming industry. They also use that data to make future sales forecasts, which is very important to different companies in order to know how many consoles or whatever they need to produce. So it's not just some random dude spouting off on Twitter. But before we get into this article, I want to go ahead and go into depth on Matt Piscatella's tweet because it is the entire basis for this article, so I feel like it's worth going into. This is exactly what his tweet had to say. The games industry would be well served to fire the toxic portion of its customer base. It limits the upside and audience growing potential of attracting new gamers to the market. For too long, it has tolerated and even courted the most toxic. This isn't sustainable. Now, when I first read this, I was left with the impression of what the actual fuck is he talking about? Fire your customers? It's the first time I think I've ever heard of that. I mean, the way he words this, it makes him sound like a complete and total corporate shill, but then again, I guess that's his job. The one line that really just stuck out when he says, "For too long it has tolerated and even courted the most toxic." He makes it sound like these gaming companies are somehow doing us a favor by selling us their video games and then in turn making a profit. That is not how capitalism works, buddy, and they're not doing us any favors. Publishers fund and release games they believe will turn a profit. It's not charity work. I'm sure the multi-billion-dollar corporations like Activision, EA, and Ubisoft have gone through so much having to tolerate selling their products to people they deem toxic. The poor things, they only have billions of dollars in annual revenue to show for it. All customers should be courted by a company because it's in their interest to do so. Without anyone buying your games, that company is not exactly going to be around for very long. However, according to Matt, this isn't sustainable. You do realize that gaming is the largest entertainment medium in the world, right? It didn't get this way by firing customers, I'll tell you that. In fact, the movie industry, which in recent years has been eclipsed by the ever-growing success of the gaming industry and has been seeing what some would call a revolt from moviegoers for the exact same reason you are trying to claim that gaming needs to adopt. I mean, let's just use Star Wars for an example. People are basically done with this series at this point because Disney issued an ultimatum. It was either step into line and side with our ideological preferences, or we do not want you as a customer. And people got that message loud and clear, and guess what? Solo did terrible in theaters as a result. And guess what? Consumers are not stupid. They will only tolerate being vilified for so long until they turn their backs on you. Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson can blame fans as much as they want for being, quote, toxic, sexist, racist. Pick your favorite from the list of now meaningless insults that SJW types love to hurl at all who dare to step out of line. It doesn't change the fact that the movie flopped compared to others in the series. This doesn't sound like something that would really help gaming grow. The claim that the removal of all toxicity will somehow skyrocket interest in gaming from a broader audience is misguided. Gaming is already growing faster than ever and shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. And that is with the toxicity, because believe it or not, people actually play games as a way to escape reality and not have to constantly worry over every little thing they do or say. It's one of the very few things in life where that is present, and that's why gaming is gaining such a wide appeal, at least in my opinion. But we're not done just yet with this tweet, because he goes into further detail in the replies, which I feel is worth mentioning. This is a reply by someone by the name of Kami Uni, and this is what he said to Matt. Anywhere that has unfiltered speech, there will be some form of toxicity. It's what we do with that toxicity that matters. I tend to just ignore it unless directly addressed to me, which is rare. A very reasonable assessment, which I would like to take one step further. This is a point that I made in my recent Rainbow Six Siege video, the term toxicity. It is so vague and broad in scope and leaves so much room for interpretation. What's toxic to someone may be completely normal and harmless to another. The basic chat filtering and automatic determination of guilt employed by Ubisoft is the epitome of this anti-toxicity argument taken to the extreme, removing any trace of context of so-called toxic words completely out of the picture. As mentioned in Kami Uni's reply, whenever there is unfiltered chat, there will always be some form of toxicity, and that is just the trade-off we make in order to be able to freely express ourselves. And you're 100% correct. When you're faced with toxicity, just ignore it. The pathetic guy sitting behind a monitor or TV cussing you out for no apparent reason is probably not someone you should put much weight behind in terms of their opinion of you. Now brace yourselves, because this may actually come as a shock to many of you who are out there actively advocating for the filtering of speech. There is this groundbreaking new feature found on almost every game or online chat service called the mute button, and it works perfectly if you are faced with any sort of toxic behavior that you cannot handle. And if this advanced form of toxic behavior prevention is not available to you, and you find yourself in a situation you cannot as an adult handle, you could always just leave the game. Consider your mind blown. So Matt responded to Kami Uni saying, "No, ignoring it doesn't work. Action must be taken." That's right, we just can't toughen up and learn not to place importance on some moron who has nothing better to do in their life than to act like a complete jackass while playing an online video game. We should actively seek them out and bring them to justice. So Kami Uni then asked, "What do you think we should do?" To which Matt replied, "Ubi has set a good benchmark with Siege. Start from there." You're kidding me, right? The single worst example of censorship in gaming and unjust banning in gaming should be taken as the benchmark? You honestly have no clue what the hell you are talking about if you think Rainbow Six Siege sets a good benchmark. Let's just point out the fact that people who dared to speak their native tongue of Spanish and just so happened to type the word black in chat were banned for doing so, because apparently the Spanish word for black is considered a racial slur by Ubisoft. There are countless other examples of this happening, and I already made a video on this exact same subject, so if you want to go and watch that, I'll have a link in the description, and I go into very deep detail on exactly what Ubisoft is doing with this chat censorship program and why it's an epic failure. But at this point, Matt might as well be advocating for downright censorship and the banning of certain words regardless of context, and that serves to no one's benefit, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so that's more than enough of our good friend Matt Piscatella and his ignorance on this subject matter. Let's dive headfirst into the article that looks like something you would expect from an intern working at Polygon or Kotaku over the summer. I'm not going to read this whole thing because I don't really care that much, but I will highlight the parts that particularly reek of misinformation. So in case you forgot our author's name, it's Adam, and this is his analysis of Matt Piscatella's thoughts on toxic behavior. The industry analyst is well placed to observe the toxic portion of its customer base. The video game industry has forever had a problem with certain parts of the community that spread bile and hatred. This includes the horrible backlash to Ellie's sexuality in The Last of Us. Okay, stop it right there. I've got to stop you right there. What backlash are you even talking about? I don't remember seeing any backlash surrounding the reveal of Ellie's sexuality after the release of the Left Behind DLC to the original Last of Us. Maybe I missed something, but it seems like you're fabricating an issue where there was none, a common tendency of our modern day outrage culture, I might add. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here. You could be referring to the Last of Us 2 trailer at E3 that they showed the lesbian kissing scene for no other reason other than to make good old SJW Neil Druckmann happy, but sure, there was some backlash over that because it served no purpose whatsoever in the gameplay trailer they showed. But at that point, everyone who already played the Left Behind DLC knew that Ellie was a lesbian, so I fail to see how that would be the case, but let's go ahead and continue. This includes the horrible backlash to Ellie's sexuality in The Last of Us, the abuse directed at Mass Effect developers after Andromeda, and the anger displayed towards Battlefield 5 developers for daring to include a female soldier in their title. It's incredible that these people can dispel their belief long enough to understand why a certain treasure hunter can kill hundreds of trained soldiers while stealing from under their noses, but not long enough to accept that a teenage girl who grew up in a post-apocalyptic world isn't straight. Could you be any more disingenuous? Seriously, are you trying to embarrass yourself at this point? You have not the slightest idea what the hell you're talking about. First off, the Mass Effect Andromeda example you say that people directed abuse towards BioWare is completely the opposite. If any side initiated that entire thing, it was on the side of BioWare, coming from a certain employee working on the game who made it very, very clear that he hated white people. Oh, well, if you ask me, that sounds pretty justifiable to be upset over, but then again, what do I know? I'm only white. But anyway, that's not even to mention the fact that EA and BioWare released this game as a buggy, damn near unplayable mess, even though they knew this game needed to be delayed and needed to be worked on further, but with the Mass Effect name behind it, they knew that the hardcore fans would go out and support it regardless of what state it launched in, and in turn, they screwed over a ton of their hardcore customers. Oh, but the people upset over that, you know, they're the real villains in this situation. How dare they not take their beating and be happy about it? I guess Adam doesn't realize that he's defending the side that tried to screw people over. Battlefield 5 is a topic that if you watch my videos you're probably more than familiar with my stance on at this point. In an attempt to boil this complex issue down to the ignorant claim that people just don't want women in video games, it shows that he is not even making the slightest attempt whatsoever to try and understand the other side of the argument and give them the common decency to explore what actually is their problem with this entire thing. And again, you bring up this whole Last of Us thing where people can't believe the fact that a girl is something other than straight. You bring it up twice. No evidence either time to support this claim. Show me a popular article that has a bunch of people in the comments basically saying, I completely agree, Ellie should have been straight. Show me a YouTube video that does the same thing that has a bunch of views and a ton of likes on it. You can't because it doesn't exist. You're pulling this out of your ass. And I know exactly what you're trying to do. You're manipulating these situations to fit your agenda. You're disguising what should be considered an opinion piece as a piece of reporting, and that is not right. You're misleading your readers, you're taking different scenarios in order to back up your own point and putting a massive spin on it, and completely undermining all background and context of each of these events. To say that people are upset over Battlefield 5 because it has women in the game, you know, that is the dumbest argument I think I've ever heard, and it's the typical argument of the people who are in constant denial that there could possibly be someone out there with a differing opinion than their own. Okay, so Adam continues. The point that has motivated Piscatella's opinion here isn't anything I've mentioned. It involves Ubisoft banning Rainbow Six Siege players for using a racial slur. No, it's not just racial slurs, but continue on. This article from The Verge, oh god, covers that situation well if you missed it. Some of the Rainbow Six Siege community have actually voiced their concern towards Ubisoft over this decision, saying that the punishment is harsh for just quoting a song. Never a good sign when someone's using The Verge as a source for a social issue, but then again, it's obvious that you enjoy being in an echo chamber and don't bother to explore the other side and broaden your viewpoints. So let's take a look at the article from The Verge. Looking at the title is all we need to know in terms of what to expect from this article. Seeing Ubisoft ban jerks in Rainbow Six Siege is now my favorite part of the game. Sounds like an unbiased and objective analysis, huh? I love how opinion pieces are now considered as reputable sources to learn about something. Top tier journalism here. You then attempt to downplay yet another valid complaint from the opposition by cherry picking one of the worst examples of this auto ban system unjustly banning someone. You didn't feel it necessary to bring up the fact that Ubisoft has been in fact discriminating against Spanish-speaking people by unjustly banning them for typing the word black in their own native language. Oh, but of course you wouldn't want to bring that up because it doesn't fit your agenda that you're trying to push. Even with this rather weak example of someone complaining that you provided, I assure you it will still further prove my point. You can read the discussion post by Dimitri for yourself, I'll have it up on the screen right now, but the key takeaway is basically he was banned for saying the N-word while quoting song lyrics. Something that was not racist by intent, but because, Ubisoft is of the mentality, you say this word, therefore you're racist, therefore you get banned. That's just such a great system. Context doesn't exist anymore, but that is my entire point. Ubisoft has removed all room for context, which is a crucial part of understanding anything. A word by itself is not racist by nature. It all depends on how it was directed. Cracker, for example, can either be a slur against whites or a food item. The context of how you use it matters. Oh, and by the way, cracker is completely allowed by Ubisoft in text chat, but the Spanish word for black is not. Double standard much, huh? So yes, in finding a rather weak and laughable argument, you tried to embarrass the other side and further credit your own stance. But sadly, that too has backfired on you because despite Dimitri's poor delivery, I can still understand exactly what he's trying to say. Oh good, we're almost done. Adam writes, the whole Twitter thread is worth checking out as it raises numerous interesting points. The most important one is that catering to your most toxic fans can end up alienating and putting off regular people interested in your platform. The toxic fans themselves can put off other people from the community. Wow, that sounded like the same sentence twice, but whatever, I gotta stop you right there. I've never heard once of anyone making their purchasing decision based off how quote-unquote toxic the community is. Do you have any sort of statistics to back this claim up that people are less likely to buy a game with a toxic fan base? No, of course you don't, because you don't have any research whatsoever in this article. You're making a drastic, unsubstantiated assumption in an attempt to justify your stance. Oh, but what's this? A real-world example? Do tell. How many times has a Dark Souls player seriously told someone to get God when they've asked for help? They subsequently might never play the rest of the series. This goes for a lot of gaming communities. Okay, we need to address the elephant in the room. If you're a Dark Souls fan like myself, you probably cringed hard at that sad attempt to say get good, not as he said it, get God. It could be a typo, but he's lost any chance of me giving him any benefit of the doubt at this point. Get good is a meme. It's a joke. It doesn't have anything malicious behind it whatsoever, and to suggest so shows your ignorance of the Souls community. In fact, it's very hard to think of a more passionate and just overall amazing community other than the Soulsborne community. I mean, even to this day, over 2 years since Dark Souls 3 released, you can still find people who are willing to help you out. They'll offer you all the advice in the world, and overall, it's just a fantastic community, but you have to get past the get good meme. I mean, it's a freaking meme. Anyone who knows Dark Souls knows that that is not serious, but yet you tried to use a meme to paint an entire community as nothing more than a toxic cesspool that deters new players. But please continue on. The constant negative stream of gaming news that breaks into mainstream media could be limited by companies shunning the players causing it. Recently, British national broadcaster the BBC covered this Roblox story. This hardly paints a pretty picture for the industry on a whole, never mind that specific community. Yet another link. In reality, this article could have just been simply a list of bullet points with links to people's articles who actually bothered to explain their own opinions on the subjects. Okay, so the Roblox story. This was actually something I heard about a while ago, but let's go ahead and go over this real quick. If you want to read the entire thing for yourself, I'll be more than happy to provide you the links in the description so you can read up on this to your heart's content. For the purpose of time, I will just read a quick passage and do my best not to laugh because, I mean, it just sounds funny, especially when you consider this is in fact in Roblox. My sweet and innocent daughter's avatar was being violently gang raped on a playground by by 2 males. A female observer approached them and proceeded to jump on her body at the end of the act. Then the 3 characters ran away, leaving my daughter's avatar laying on her face in the middle of the playground. Thankfully, I was able to take screenshots of what I was witnessing so people will realize just how horrific this experience was. Screenshots and comments for those who can stomach it. And here are these screenshots from the incident. Sure, situations like this may make people have a negative view of gaming if they have no clue what the hell they're talking about, but there was absolutely nothing that could have prevented this from happening. This type of toxic behavior from a hacker is completely unavoidable no matter what safeguards on profanity or toxic behavior are in place. By hacking, someone is literally breaking the game, so chances are the rules are thrown out the window at that point. And given that fact, I just don't really think this was a good example to use. I mean, sure, you could argue that this definitely did create negative press for the gaming industry that it most definitely does not need if it ever wants to expand and become even more mainstream than it already is. I will give you that. But when you're talking about a hacker versus some dude who's cussing someone out while playing Call of Duty, it is a completely different method of prevention, and it almost has nothing to do with each other. On one hand, you just have someone saying what they probably shouldn't be saying versus someone who is fundamentally going in and changing the game themselves. So it's a completely different thing, and it was not the best example to use in terms of talking about toxic behavior prevention. The best way I can sum up this article is an opinion piece disguised as a piece of reporting, and that is true, and I think it's 100% clear. Because he never makes his point abundantly clear in terms of his opinion on this topic, but in reading the article, the bias starts to come through, especially when selecting the different examples, the different sources. They all line up with the pro-toxic behavior prevention mentality that lines up also with the censorship mentality. So I know where he's coming from writing this article. I think it's just misinformed. There's a lot of details missing. There's a lot of hard facts missing. There's no objectivity whatsoever. There's no semblance whatsoever of a counter argument to any point in this entire argument. And that is definitely a problem. But then again, we are all entitled to our opinions. I will have a link to this article in the description below if you want to go and read it for yourself. All I ask is that you don't go out of your way to spread unnecessary hate to the author. I mean, we're talking about gaming. Don't be a dick, have some common decency, but the link will be there if you want to go and read it for yourself. We are all entitled to our own opinion. I have my opinion, he has his opinion, you have your opinion, and that is what's great about free speech and free thought. So go click the link if you want to go and check out the article for yourself, but don't be an asshole, okay? Also in the description will be a link to my Discord server. I got a lot of requests to make one, so I finally did. I'm still very new to Discord, so I'm just going to kind of learn it as we go along, but the server is up, and if you want to go ahead and join, click that link. If you don't click it, doesn't matter, but it'll be a way for me to interact with you guys outside of YouTube and Twitter, so I think that'll be really cool, and I look forward to talking to you guys there. So go join the Discord if you are interested just by clicking the link in the description below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.